button. Oh no, we've got both.
That's a right deal for the yellow.
Hey, you probably got your name on that. Just leave it.
Oh, you always watching.
Ready, open.
So I'm going to rate it, yes.
Just about reading. Yeah, reading.
All right, I'll push it.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry.
That clock is slightly out of kilter. It always is like that. Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to the meeting of the Cromwell Community Board. Lovely to have everybody with us today. We have, of course, got Neil Gillespie joining us online. He's unable to be present here today, but he is present in an online way. So welcome, Neil, hiding in behind a screen. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Janine and Reese to present to us in a public forum on a proposal. Yeah, you're fine to take your mask off, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I'm here on behalf, my name is Janine Wood. I'm here in my capacity as one of the original trustees of the Cromwell and Districts Community Trust. Our trust's responsibility is basically to champion the Cromwell Community Plan. So there's been 3 of those that have been done over the years. Through that process, I ended up with the Trails Networks Trust, which you probably have seen me, but more recently on some of those elements. Last year, we reviewed the outstanding items from previous plans, and one of those was the Cromwell Chinese settlement work that was started by Terry Emmett and the Cromwell Promotions Group over 10 years ago. And we thought that was worth revisiting, especially in line with the hall redevelopment in that area. So if you recall back in late last year, Ali Valentine, our chair, and myself, via Teams, we introduced you to that concept, and we've been moving on since then. So since then, we've gauged support locally, and we put a survey out, and from that survey, 87% of the respondents were in favour of us pursuing the development of that area and using a Chinese settlement, recognising that history. And we've also contacted leaders of the Otago Chinese community, and they have support and willingness to work with us on this project. So my purpose for today is to introduce you to Reese Jenkins, who's from our trust, and he's been working on the more detailed elements of this project. So I'll hand you over to Reese, who's sitting there. Hi, Reese.
Hi, Janine, how are you?
Welcome.
So thanks everyone. So we're here today to talk about what we're describing as phase 1 of our project, which is really the early understanding of whether we can pursue this from a council consenting point of view. What we need is to conduct a new site survey and get some new site plans drawn up, because we have moved the site to the west slightly from the site that was selected 10 years ago. So the site that we're currently looking at is on the slope between the Victoria Arms Hotel and the cycle trail. And so there's a bit of money required to do that survey and the new drawings. And then there's some funding required for the consenting process. So we've gone out and approached 3 different companies to get pricing for that piece of work. And we've assessed the returns that we got back from those. And our understanding is that, and what we're requesting for support from you guys today is we'll need about $3,000. So this is including GST, $3,000 all up for the site survey and the new plans, and then $12,000 including GST for the consenting process, and that includes an anticipated public hearing. So all up, a request for $15,000 for the first stage, and then if all goes well with that, then we will embark on understanding the costs and the feasibility of the greater detail in terms of constructing the site. Janine, anything else from that really high level point of view before we take questions?
Just that when we talk about constructing the site, we're actually talking about just identifying platforms similar to the survey work that was done by Neville Ritchie prior to the flooding of the lake. And so basically you're talking about platforms, and we've already talked to the Polytech about the stonework to recreate some of the walls. We may only recreate, you know, one building at a time, but it's sort of representative of that rich history and the contribution that the Chinese made to our gold mining heritage and our community back in the day.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's very difficult, I think, to think about this without seeing some kind of site plan. And I say that within the context that you've got the historic precinct, and we're in the middle of looking at a new hall museum further along that shore, and first, when you were talking, the first thing I said to myself, where's the site plan showing what land you're talking about?
So as Reece said, it's directly down from the Vic, and we spoke about it being a connector between old Cromwell and the new things, something between the two. So there's currently a pathway that goes on an angle down there. So that land there, we've already got the plan for the stuff closer towards the hall, which we can't use now because it'll be part of this development. So that's why we need to redraw the plan.
Yeah, but without actually splitting, because in the longer term, the intention is to integrate, as you all know, is to integrate that precinct with the Hall Museum as one integral whole, and without having more detail around the actual physical site and what limitations that might place on other plans for integration of the whole precinct. I think it'd be very useful to be able to see that within the overall context, because, and I say that partly too because my personal perception of the historic precinct as it is now is that it faces some very real challenges around accessibility and parking, and I want to be reassured that what's being proposed doesn't cut down future options to address those problems.
Well, that's why we proposed it to you back in late last year, so it was included in that concept of the integration of the.
You've shifted the physical side. What I'm saying is more information would be.
Yeah, well, that's what we can do, and that's what the purpose of this meeting is for.
Am I able to share my screen just so we can have a look at a map?
Sure.
Would that help?
Pardon?
If he shared a screen, would that help? So you
Yes.
can see the map of what was originally going to be there.
So can you see them?
Yeah.
See the map?
The layout, yeah, the Google map.
Yeah. So you can see the Victoria Arms Hotel here. So it's this little piece of land directly to the south between the car park and the bike track. That's where we're talking.
Show me where the original plan was. It was on a bigger scale and a less steep land. So just with your mouse, show where the original plan was made. No, back towards the hall.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yep. It was in here.
Back of the land. All of that was in the original 10 years ago, but now that's not appropriate, and it's also not a bigger piece of land, so that's why we have to get a
Can
new
you
plan.
refresh my memory, I'm sorry, about when you came near the end of last year? Was it in a public forum?
No, it was via Teams.
Oh, it was in a Teams, but was it in a public forum, or was it as a feedback from your community plan?
No, it was just a public forum so that we could see the idea. We wanted it up in front of you before the whole stuff got too far down the line. We knew we weren't directly involved in that. We wanted to make sure it was included.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that we haven't had anything
Nothing formal as yet, because we didn't have anything formal to do with you.
And you're wanting to build like old Chinatown back or something, is that right? What is it?
The original plan that that Terry Emmett did was just basically the platforms, and you could see where they had in the different structures, and then eventually build over time. You can build up the rock walls, and maybe just do one of the houses, but over time. And we're talking about doing something a bit more upmarket in terms of the interpretation panels. Can you talk about that, Reece?
Sure. So we're proposing to steer away from traditional signs stuck in the ground to go with a app-based virtual reality experience, and the Lawrence Chinese camp people have expressed an interest in working with us on developing that technology. So the example I've been sharing with the trust is what I've seen on the Geelong foreshore over in Australia, where you walk along and you stand next to an item of interest. You pull your phone out and you hold the phone up, and as you scan your phone around, you can see it's like a layer of what the site would have looked like back when it was being occupied as a Chinese camp. And so you can record people moving around and full buildings in full construction that will sit over the top of the stones that will be on the ground. So you don't need to reconstruct the whole site, because you'll be able to see a virtual reconstruction of the whole site as it was back in the day. So it's pretty cool technology, and that means you don't have to maintain signs.
So to answer your question, but not a lot of buildings, but maybe one to represent it more, but the rest of it is very much virtual.
Other questions or?
So is that in terms of costing? That obviously would come later.
Yes.
Yes.
Very much so.
You mentioned earlier on that originally it was in conjunction with the promotions group.
Correct.
Are they still involved at all or not?
No, not at this stage, no.
Not at all. Okay.
They've gone down a different path from back in those days.
So you're looking at other funding lines, Janine?
Yes, we will be.
But you're looking for the initials?
Yes, because we have to do the plan and we have to do the consenting to see all that sort of thing. I mean, Terry had that quite a way down, but that was the bit he didn't get over the line, was the final thing. But we think we've got a lot further down with having consulted more people and got more support from the different communities as well.
Reasonably detailed landscape can be useful.
We've got the old one, but it's not relevant because it's a different location. So
Do you think it's a duplication of work that's being done in other towns close to us, or even the work that's being done already at the Gold Mining Centre?
no, it's not a duplication because the Gold Mining Centre was recreated for a film.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's still a nod to the
It's part of that trail. I mean, like we're directly above where the original Chinatown was. We had different talks about whether it should be a Chinese town, and that's or a camp. We've chosen the word settlement, and it sits in line with that progression from Dunedin to Lawrence through Cromwell and then to Arrowtown. So it becomes part of that story, part of that trail as well.
So this is being done under the auspices of?
The Cromwell Districts Community Trust. That's the head I've got on at the moment.
And where does the Cromwell precinct hat sit?
They've in support of it, so they're working with us on it. You know, we've talked to them right from the very beginning, to the precinct people right behind it.
Financially?
I don't know yet because we haven't got to that stage of what financials.
Right, so it's just a bit. Thanks.
Neil, did you have anything?
No, other than I can recall the original work that started this off, and I think it's an opportunity that needs to be explored and see where it might fit. I think Nigel might have just made the point that at the same time it's got to fit with other stuff that's happening in that precinct area. Yeah, know the site pretty well, but it's a matter then of just how that's going to work, and there may be some other interested landowners that need to be talked to as well through that process.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Janine and Reece, for your time today. Sounds like I agree with Nigel. We probably need to see a little bit more of exactly what's planned there, because it does sound like you're thinking ahead back because of the way that the land might be used for the development of a new facility further up from there. And of course, we would need a formal report to come to us to make a decision on funding.
That's right. So we thought that was the correct process. So we had to come to you now and see if there was an appetite for it, so we can put together a formal report so you can see more details.
All right. So there's probably is a need for you to work with staff to think about what that might look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. And then that takes us to our apologies for today, and I have received an apology from Vernon Murray for today's meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the apologies, please? Thank you. Thank you, Bob. That's Cheryl and Bob. And that then takes us to confirmation of the minutes. Any discussion or any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? And if not, can I have a mover and a seconder to confirm those minutes? Correct. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Buck. All in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Little disembodied voice coming out of it. Sorry, we'll laugh every time we speak, Neil. We'll have to get it over ourselves. Right. That takes us to page 16 of your agendas. Just to remind you that it's important to declare any interests as we move through our meeting today, and stand aside from decision making where there's a conflict. Thank you. Thank you. From Word Track. Thanks. Righty ho. And then that takes us to item 22.5.2 on page 19 of your agenda, which is the McNulty shed proposal.
Everybody. I take this report as having been read. I'm probably not going to go into too much detail, given that both the applicant and Jessie Sullivan gave you an overview of sort of their intentions at the last meeting. I'll ask if there are any questions.
Got any questions about this item? Jessie did give us quite a clear outline of what was being proposed.
I've just got a little one question, because I actually visited the site there yesterday, and I was interested to see that all of the parking spaces were full, and pretty much the whole of that yard area, if you like, was full of cars parked there, and that was around about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Is the proposal that this will be open in the evening time at all, or not?
I don't think it actually is at this stage. Please make sure it isn't. Not at this stage.
6 to 8, some kind
It's
of
got
weekend.
winter being Monday to Sunday 11 to 5, summer
I
being
can see that.
6 or 8. Yeah,
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
that's okay.
I had some questions around, again around parking, because it describes McNulty House and its refurbishment, and at that time 8 car parks were created behind this proposed, where the proposed operation will be, and in the report it says that if this goes ahead, that there wouldn't be less than minor impact on car parking. And alongside that, it's proposed that the historic precinct is going to build a new building at the back of that rectangle of land to accommodate storage needs. And my concerns are, I couldn't see, unless you correct me, anything in the report that says how big a facility the Pinot shed is going to be, how many people it could potentially hold. And I suppose I'm really questioning the assessment that there would only be a minor impact on car park. And alongside that, I would also wonder within this proposed facility or change of use facility within the historic precinct, whether that cuts out future opportunities for making the historic precinct more accessible, because it seems to me that the precinct as it sits today has got very real problems of access and sufficient parking, just as a general comment. Specific event like the farmers market. And so I've got several strands to my concern. One is if they build a new storage shed at the back of that rectangle of land, they're potentially cutting off being able to have better access into the rest of the precinct. And I would also like to know what the potential customer base is, how many people will that retail operation hold, 20, 30, 40? Because that obviously has a direct impact on the number of cars that might be, and you're trying to attract a tourist market from what's being said in the company supporting documentation. And we proposed that the 8 car parks that were put in place to serve McNulty House. I mean, that says it all really. McNulty House, which would not have nearly the same traffic generation as this facility would require 8 car parks. Now we're trying to require any for this. So I've got some real concerns both in the overall precinct access and parking and potential accessibility, and then specifically what's the size of the retail operation going to be in terms of numbers that accommodate, and really question whether there's more than a minor impact on car parking in the surrounding streets that may affect residences.
I think that was really what my point was as well, because as I said yesterday when I visited there were probably 15 vehicles parked in that yard there. And McNulty House certainly wasn't being used, and obviously the wine bar is not being used. So
I think that when Jessie was here, they did talk about the fact that it's quite often that people use it. It is the committee that runs McNulty House and stuff do park there, and that it's the craft people who use that parking as well, and that's quite often how that's used. I know that
is that something like the impact on that area? Is that something that would be looked at in the resource consent?
Yeah, I would think so.
having said that, there's plenty of on-street parking there, of course.
There is, I know I've run an event at McNulty House for 50 people, an evening event, and we had children there during the day. In the evening, then people did park on the street as well as in those parks. I mean, in terms of the size of the shed isn't changing, is that right? It's but there's those 2 additional smaller sheds.
That's what they're proposing.
Yeah.
It's just one shed.
One shed, 2 with a divider. Yeah. So the original workshop doesn't change in size.
The original workshop, I understand doesn't. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. They're just going through reading the process.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point that the resource consent will address these issues, but for me, that's a bit late in the process. I would really like to know what the potential customer base of Pinot Shed would be, because there's obviously a very direct correlation between the size of the facility and the number of people that will accommodate and the car parking required. So you've already got statements in saying that less than minor impact on car parking. And I don't know, I don't believe we've got sufficient knowledge to be able to accept that. And
If I could comment through the chair, I know that draft resource consent and licence applications have been prepared. They would address the car parking, but unfortunately we haven't got them. Because that application, the resource consent would need to address that. So it's obviously been prepared, but you said
Yes. Resource consent application.
oh, you've got
Is
it.
there, it is there in the,
Madam Chair.
yes,
Yeah, further to what Louise is saying is that, yeah, there is a copy of the
yeah, there is, it's in there, yeah.
actually, in the report. Like I hear what Nigel's saying, but at the end of the day, if we can't rely on our district plan to deal with the parking for the commercial operation, which it seems to have done pretty well to date elsewhere from my experience, I don't think it's something that the board needs to concern itself with. If it doesn't meet the requirements of the Resource Management Act and our district plan, then the decision will reflect that, and then it becomes simply a matter for Old Cromwell in particular to make sure they manage the car parking availability for the business. And don't also forget is that the whole of Old Cromwell has no real dedicated parking anyway. So this business could be operated anywhere else within the precinct, and this board wouldn't be involved. So I think we should probably just stick to what our concerns should be and let the process take care of the car parking and stuff like that that's in an ROA space.
It would certainly clean up the very messy area currently next to the shed, wouldn't it? And then if you look at the photograph where it shows the it would make that a much more attractive space in that what is a beautiful area with McNulty House in it.
I forget in the previous life, this was a transport yard. It had trucks and trailers and stuff coming in and out of all day.
Okay, anyone else got questions or things they want to raise with Debbie? That was that you raising?
No, I'm happy to answer that. There's no, I don't see any problem with it. Yeah, as you say, everyone else goes through the same protocol. But yeah, as you say, it used to be a transport. It used to be 10 concrete trucks in there and about 3 tick-rotors.
And we don't lose the 8 parks, there's still.
No, I understand. I hear what Neil's saying, and I'm reassured the process will take care of these issues.
Because it's the document's definitely there. And I do think it tidies up that space quite nicely and makes for a visitor experience that means that the beautiful work that they've done on the McNulty House actually gets seen rather more frequently.
And it's an exciting proposition.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Right, so.
It's full support of the concept.
Yeah, but I mean, those questions are important to ask and about how that will be dealt with in the process. That's, so that takes us back to page 19. And to the recommendations. Thank you, Neil. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Buck. All in favour?
No.
Any against? Thank you. Thank you, guys. Then that takes us to item 22.5.3 on page 65 of your agenda, which is the road naming approval for the Wooing Tree development. Welcome, Faith.
Got tangled up. Afternoon, everybody. So today we're revisiting the road naming of the second stage of the Wooing Tree development. Details of each of the road names was presented at the last board meeting by the developers. However, the report was left lying on the table while members considered new information. Developers have since provided a report which is attached as Appendix 1 with further explanation regarding the original road names with the addition of several alternative names. Please note previously one name was omitted, therefore 11 names need to be chosen. And an updated map is attached as Appendix 2. road names need to be decided today in order to meet the 224C requirements. Please note on the list of preferred names, Sharon Booth Place would not be acceptable as it consists of both a first name and a surname, but Booth Place fits the criteria. Laughing L Lane being 2 words does not fit the criteria either. I hand back to the chair for discussion.
Thank you. Would anybody like to kick off the discussion today?
I just ask a question to clarify the extent of the existing road names and where they actually start and finish, please. Faye, can you help me with that?
So you're referring to the map?
So Vintage Street runs through the middle and then stops before it turns right into what I think is Magnum Drive that goes in a complete loop back onto Vintage Street. Is that about right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and then Blondie Drive goes all the way through to the west and then round to the bottom of where Finla Terrace is on the map. Is that right?
Wellingtree Avenue is in there too, Neil. So the end of Blondie Drive, Wellingtree Avenue continues right round.
Well, that's the bit I'm confused by, because so Wellingtree Avenue then is going to start where?
I think it will start at the intersection where you actually turn into the development. You'll turn right into Blondie Drive, or you'll turn left into Wellingtree Ave.
The only reason I was confused is to the left of where it says Wellingtree Avenue by visitor accommodation. I'm sure that says Blondie Drive underneath, and that's what had me confused.
Yes.
Sorry, it says Blondie Drive, but does.
In the wee wording,
Yeah.
just right above Wellingtree.
Between Sharon Booth Drive and Wellingtree Ave, it says Blondie Drive.
I don't think that's correct. I think the intention is to have at the intersection to change that to Wellingtree Ave from that point.
It says it right along, so it
Yeah.
says it, yeah, there's a couple of places it still says it on that direction.
Okay,
Yeah.
we need to get that clarified, but my understanding is that's the intention.
There's a real risk then if it's not, then we have a bit of a problem today with how we call these names. But let's work on the basis that is what they're proposing.
The
And I
ones
guess
that have already been named, can we just tick those off? So we've already got Blondie Drive has been named, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Vintage Street,
Yes,
Magnum Drive.
yes.
Is that
so
all?
what we're saying is that Blondie Drive ends at the intersection with State Highway 8. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Cool. All right. Madam Chair, I've got some suggestions if it's helpful.
Okay, yes, that would be very helpful, Neil.
Can you just tell me ones that were named already? Wellingtree.
So the ones that are already named, let's just clarify that again. We've got Blondie Drive, Vintage Street and Magnum Drive. So just 3 already named.
So I'll just work through the list of names as they appear in the map that they've provided, and give you some logic for some of the changes that I'm going to propose. I think Wellingtree Avenue, and especially now that it has been explained that it extends from the State Highway around in that loop and back onto itself, I have no issue with that. That seems to be sensible and in keeping with what the site was started out. Tickle Pink Lane, apart from being a double barrel name, I just think it's too specific to a brand of wine that may not exist. And we know how quickly that you can get rid of a vineyard, so the wine itself could go as well. Some insights or not, some other local knowledge has helped me understand this a bit better, and I think it's important that we know what this land used to be, apart from being a whole lot of sand in the middle of the shortcut road. But there was a bird there called a dotterel that was a well-known nesting site, as I understand from the locals, and I think that will be a far better name to use and call that Dotterel Lane. Regato Way, I understand the story behind that, and I've got to say to the developers, the stories they provided are quite helpful. I think that's a good connection to the wider wine industry in central Otago. I like the use of Sandstorm Way, because if those that were here in days gone by before some stuff was planted, sand was a big part of Cromwell's life due to a certain prevailing wind, so I get that. Sharon Booth Drive, as Faye has pointed out, can't use a double barrel name, but actually the Booth family have been in Cromwell for many, many years, and no disrespect to Sharon and what she's done, but actually it's her husband's family, and in particular Colin Booth goes back for some time as a local identity, so I couldn't think of a better name to reflect on a lot of things to do with the Booth family, and Sharon's a big part of that, so I think that's a really good name to use. I like the idea of the Poakai Drive, the Haast Eagle. I think that's a a good reflection back onto stuff that none of us were here for, even Nigel. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I meant to mute. Noble Way. Yeah, I think again a bit far removed for most of us to get the fact that a connection to wine, and to me Noble doesn't mean much else. So this area was an area of tussocks and lots of them. So I think tussock is a name that we could use, and it could be Tussock Way. Chafer Court, I get with the idea of going back to the chafer beetle, but actually it's in the wrong place. If we're going to do something about the chafer beetle, we'll have an opportunity for that when we do the industrial development down where the chafer beetle reserve is, or closer to it. So I think that's a better time to use it. So I think there, the gecko was and lizards were quite popular in this particular area from those with boyhood memories. And so Kawariki, which is the Maori name off the list for the jeweled gecko, seems to me one that's probably, dare I say, easy to pronounce, and has a connection to the area. The other one about the Bacchus Court, yeah, I'm not really too into history from Greece or Rome, wherever it came from, but I think there's another good opportunity to recognise another bird species that was known to be frequent in this area, and that's the spur-winged plover. So I think Plover Court would make more sense in reflecting on the bird life that used to be there. The other names I think that are only left are Hadley Place and Finla Terrace. I get the developers wanting to have a connection to the family, so I've had no problem with them. So they're my starters for 10 for anybody who's got any thoughts.
Can I just get the clarity? Thank you, Neil. I'll acknowledge that the thinking that you've put behind that. On the map, there's 2 Wooing Tree Avenues.
I think it is designed to go.
Is it going all the way around?
The way around and then.
Oh, and then back down. Okay, cool. Sorry, that's confused me a little bit. Okay, so can you repeat, Neil, what was the name of the native name for the gecko that you gave? Can you spell it to me?
Kawariki, Kawariki. It's on the list. It's in the report of the Maori names.
Kawariki, right. Super. Okay. So to give fair opportunity to others around the table, are there any other thoughts or suggestions or thinking around the names that we've seen put forward by the developer, and names that we think may be alternative names to those?
Well, just one, I'm not being smart or anything, but like we never had any say in the whole subdivision, but I'd like to see that Ricardo Way, put it Cindy's way, she gave him the money.
What? No response?
Stunned.
There was just some stunned silence, yes, absolutely.
Well,
And welcome Tim to our meeting as well. I saw you
I
meeting.
had a phone interview I had to handle.
Okay, so I can see that we've got some suggestions from the developer that that in Neil's perspective fitted the brief. So Wooing Tree Avenue, Brigato Way, Sandstorm Way, Booth Drive, Puakai Drive, Finla, is it a terrace, and Cadley Place. Anyone else have any comment on those?
So are we happy with Finla Terrace and Hadley Place?
Listen, my logic for supporting them
was one given by the kid.
Yeah.
My logic for supporting them was that it is the developers' children, and given previous road namings, we have been mindful of the family of developers. And I think, you know, I wouldn't mind being the proud parent to say I named a road that in a development that I spent, you know, considerable time and effort doing after my kids. You know, I know you can say that they haven't been there forever. They don't need to have been. I think this is a good way to reflect the old and the new. And the other thing.
To be fair to Hadley and Finn, they have been there the whole of their lives. Yeah, they can't have been there any longer than they have been there.
And they are private roads as well, so a little bit different. So I think we should recognise that as well. That was
Yeah,
what
and I do remember we've had that debate quite fully at a previous road naming for a subdivision in Lowburn, where we allowed names of the developers' children to be included in the development to be able to get that over the line and to make sure that that family was given the opportunity to have their provenance there. So anyone else got a comment on the names that Neil has mentioned that came from the developers list? So Wollongtree Avenue, Vigrato Way, Sandstorm Avenue, Sandstorm Way, Booth Drive, Tuakai Drive, Finland Terrace and Hadley Place. And then, so the next part of that is to think about the names that Neil has suggested that are more a nod to the history of flora and fauna that come from our district that might be good names on there. I know that there's been a conversation about the dotterel being really prevalent in the not too distant past on that site. People happy with dotterel? Was it dotterel? What were you suggesting? Dotterel Lane?
Dotterel Lane, and interestingly, it sort of probably looks straight up to Mount Dotterel, doesn't it, Buck?
Pardon?
It probably looks almost straight up to Mount Dotterel, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just another thing, we used to bring all the stock in from Wanaka Road. They used to come over the Lowburn Bridge down that way into the sale yards just here. So that was a main thoroughfare for us, running all the stock in here by sheep, cattle, sheep, and we bought minimum horses. So.
Nigel, you had some comments you wanted to make.
My general view is that I don't mind generic names associated with an industry, but I don't like the use of specific brand names, in this case names for wines, being used, and so my general support would be for the list that Neil has proposed. I think that's makes sense to me.
You happy with Tussock? That's the only one that sticks out to me. I'm sorry, Neil. The others I can see very much.
There used to be a lot of big moss, a real big hard moss, but I wouldn't have a clue what it was all down on those flats.
Certainly plenty that around the house.
It's better than Shaft, I thought.
Shafted.
Yeah.
Is Marron not a more usual name for that type of? No, it's not.
Not here. It would be Tussock. I don't know if what the native name would be for it. Pardon? Karakiki's
I just wondered, can we just check Tussock? Have you got your
Hatiti, sorry.
I'm concerned about that. Terrace, we might have a Tussock.
TT.
The Mary name of Tussock now.
I just found out what it is. Yes, TT. ITI or ATE? ITI, yeah. Hatiti.
There's Mary for Tussock.
In that case, we have a lovely name.
Yeah. Tussock's just being checked to see if it's already being used somewhere else. Is that what's happening over there? Yes. And in the meantime, we have confirmed that the Māori name for Tussock is Patiti as an alternative.
Sorry, there's a spelling mistake on Clover as well.
Oh, yes, yeah, whatever. So that.
Yes, I would be,
Yeah.
Dotterel spelt right.
Oh,
No, it's not right.
Dotterel is D-O-T-T-R-E-L.
Yeah.
E-L, yeah.
Yeah.
D-O-T-T-E-R-E-L.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, there's a whole lot of tussocks on page 76 of the agenda and the Maori words for them.
Page 76.
Yeah.
Tussock. Manaya, Hatiti.
I've got to be brutally honest. I looked at those ones and I thought I did say, well, it needs to be a name that's probably, dare I say, easily to be pronounced as well. And I figured the easy way, because there was several options there, I thought Tussock's pretty simple.
Well, yeah, and Manaya's, that could, yeah, that one would be Mania, or I can see that wouldn't be said correctly by anybody. I don't think Patiti is particularly tricky. Patiti.
That's so much easier.
It's so much easier. I'm one voice. That's me thinking, is there something other than, yeah. But if everybody else is happy with that, then I'm happy to go with the kind of me as a Spanish dress.
That's the way you go.
Well, my view is that I was a little bit unsure about Finland and Hadley, but Neil's explanation, I think, cleared that up for me.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm feeling like I would be outvoted on Patiti anyway. It is. Yeah.
That's not.
Madam Chair, the only reason I'd be hesitant, I don't think they were
It
silver.
is on the list. It's Silver Tussock on page 76.
Yeah, I don't know that there were silver tussocks were around here particularly. I might be wrong. I don't know. Buck might remember. Are they silver tussocks or there's tussocks? Yeah.
But Tussock's fine because yeah. Yeah.
So is Neil moving?
Are you moving that, Neil?
So let's go back through this list and make sure everybody is happy. I think there's a good mix here of the names that have been put forward by the developer and some names that we think fit for our community. Wollongtree Avenue, Regato Way, Sandstorm Way, Booth Drive, Puakai Drive, Finla Terrace, Hadley Place, Dottrell Lane, Tussock Way, Plover Court, Kawariki Court.
Just that one on Hadley Lane there, I don't know if it's, but right, it was Jeff and that actually got this done.
Yeah, and they had.
So is there anything in Jeff in that first subdivision? Is there anything with Jeff in this what?
They've been that was part of the initial
They still got them.
work when I've spoken to Steve. But I would have thought that they would both talk together as family and have made that decision.
That politics we shouldn't play.
Yeah, that's family
Yeah, no,
business
yeah, but
relationship stuff.
the extra one that actually built.
All right, so who would like to move this? Thank you, Buck. And a seconder? Thank you, Bob. All in favour? Anyone against? Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully our developers will be happy with the result. Right, that takes us to item 22.5.4 on page 81, which is the proposed road stopping on part of Melbourne.
I'll move all the recommendations.
I haven't even said welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Welcome, Linda. Let's your report.
Very succinct report. Thank you.
No, it's the disembodied voice. Discombobulated us all.
I'm happy to accept Neil's recommendation.
I'll second it.
Thank you for your report. And of course, this is something that was left to lie and has come back slightly altered. Yes?
Yes, so the alteration is that after the report was left to lie on the table, because of the price, and we wanted to discuss the fact that if the board were required to pay for the land, they would be effectively buying land off council for council to be owned by council but paid for by the board, which probably didn't really align with the way that we would like to do business.
So we obtained a resolution whereby each road stopping that was performed by council that included an element of public benefit would be considered on a case-by-case basis, with council being allowed to transfer that at nil consideration. So after I obtained that resolution, I came back and I have bring the report in a slightly modified version that it is transferred at nil consideration, but all costs are associated with the stopping, because there will still be the survey and gazettal costs to be paid from out of the Cromwell Memorial Hall and Event Centre budget.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Linda. We've already got a mover. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Nigel. All in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that takes us to 22.5.5, which is the Mayor's report.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's been fairly busy actually since we last met. I attended alongside Deputy Mayor Neil, the CEO, of Councillor Ali of the Vincent Ward, the LGNZ conference in the in Palmerston North. We'll just leave it at that. The conference had panel discussions, too many panel discussions actually. It wound up becoming quite tedious. But the topics included reimagining local government, co-governance, environmental wellbeing, economic, social and cultural wellbeing. We had speakers, Prime Minister Ardern, Local Government Minister Mahuta, Development Minister, Economic Development Minister Nash, Environment Minister Parker talking on RMA reforms, and Simon Watts, Opposition spokesperson of LG. Of all of them, the best speaker was a young man called Cam Carloon, who's he was the breakfast keynote speaker, a young man with cerebral palsy who's an utter inspiration. If you ever get a chance to see him or watch a TED talk by him, he's brilliant. Closing speech by Dr. Lucy Hone on resilience. Also attended the rural and provincial sector in Wellington. First face-to-face meeting in about a year. We had Minister Mahuta again speak on Three Waters, as you'd imagine, and on other reforms. Particular concern to me in the Water Services Entity Bill is that there's no standardisation or even harmonisation of pricing within the entities. So we've submitted fairly strongly on that, amongst other things, by Council. Minister Parker spoke on the RMA. The RMA reforms aren't really in the forefront of the public's consciousness, certainly not as much as the Three Waters reforms, but they're going to have a bigger impact on local decision and placemaking than the Three Waters reforms ever will. Simon Watts, I mentioned him, he's the opposition spokesperson on local government. He's been in the role about 6 months, but I thought he spoke very well. He spoke better at rural and provincial than I think he did at the national conference. He was quite clear in saying National will repeal and replace. I use those words a lot, the Three Waters legislation next year if they are elected in. I attended the Cromwell Business Breakfast last month, as I will tomorrow. There's always a good turnout at those events. It's always a pleasure to go to. Attended my first Matariki celebration, which was a little bit challenging in places, standing in the freezing cold in a circle of strangers or people, acquaintances, talking about the people you've lost in the last year and what your dreams are for the next year is kind of different, but it was good. Also attended a dinner that weekend cooked by Nivan Men as part of a government program to teach them some skills outside of the fruit industry while they're here. It was really good. We had a string band play. When did anyone last hear a string band? It's such a great thing to hear, and hopefully we'll hear more of them. They seem to have been absent for quite some time. Wednesday 13th, along with Nigel and Cheryl, I hosted newly anointed Associate Minister for Local Government and Civil Defence Minister Kieran McAnulty in Chambers. He arrived with an entourage of 5 others. If you're ever in a situation where you've got a minister come to see you, if he brings lots of bureaucrats, it's a good sign. If they come, if he or she, if they come on their own, nothing's going to happen. We think it's the first time a minister as senior as that's ever visited CODC, so that's pretty good. He's going around every rural council, provincial council in the country. There's 55 of them. So I think that ambition needs to be admired, no matter what political persuasions. And he gave me a ring too when we had the flooding incidents as his Minister of Civil Defence, just to make sure everything was under control. Attended a sod turning ceremony at Cromwell Primary School last week, one of the new buildings being developed to meet the growing needs and size of the schools. A good event and a pleasure to be at, as was last Saturday morning at the Cromwell Early Learning Centre, where along with Madam Chair, we enjoyed the opening of its whaharawa. Despite it being bloody cold, there was a very good turnout of the public for this joyous occasion. They had a lonely time being one of the very few Cromwell Goat supporters on the balcony of the Wakatipu Rugby Club as the champions went down in the final to the home side. Wasn't necessarily a bad thing because at one stage they were contemplating throwing me off the balcony when we were ahead because I was getting a bit noisy. Great effort by a team that had a rough start of the season. And I also visited the famed 13-hour house at Forest Lodge Orchard near Cromwell. Pretty exciting development that could be a game changer for on-site workers' accommodation in Central with its modular design, allowing it to grow with the needs of the operation. So it's been fairly busy. Happy to take any questions.
Forest, is that the new one up here?
Off Gilmore Road, well, not Gilmore, opposite Gilmore Road, just past Mount Kaiser Station, but on the other side. It's got totally electrified cherry orchard, so its fuel bill on its books last year was 0, which is pretty exciting. And the house is designed so that when they need more accommodation, they just unbolt one wall, move that over, bolt a couple of sidewalls on, bolt it back on. So if your family grows or as your orchard grows or whatever, you just add rooms like it's Lego. Another idea that might help into the future.
Thank you. Any support? Have I got a seconder?
All right, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Tim, what's the sustainability of that orchard development? Because I know it's been done with a lot of grant money. So going forward, is it sustainable? And without the grant money, would it have been achievable, dare I say, affordable, in other words, economic? Because I know it's a fantastic thing, I get all that. But my concern is going, yeah, well, when someone else has got you to there, can the next person make a business case out of it that says that actually this is affordable and therefore has a commercial return, or do we not know?
Look, I wouldn't like to speak on Mike Casey's behalf, so I qualify what I'm going to say very much, but my impression is that whilst without that grant it might not be feasible now, when diesel gets to $4 or $5 a litre, it probably will be. So it's good to have that money get put in to to iron out the wrinkles and everything else, because fossil fuels only going to go up in price or become less acceptable, and it is also a great way to sell the product at a premium, because there are people out there that will pay a whole lot more knowing that it comes from a zero carbon. So look, it's an exemplar at the moment that's been created with government assistance, but it's also going to pave the way as the needs of the economy change, to show how to do it. So, yeah, I think your point's well made, Neil, but as the situation evolves, we'll see more opportunity for it. You think what an average orchard would spend on diesel for the fans and all the rest of the operation now, or other fossil fuels, you take that off your books every year and replace it with nothing. The balance starts to change. It may not be there yet, but Mike would be better to talk to that.
No, but the key thing is that what you've said is that the grant money is proving the concept, and a few other things need to happen to make it, dare I say, the economical side of things to be the thing to do for the future. But that's why the grant money has probably been provided, I guess, by the government and others to prove that it does have a place going forward, which is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly.
Any further questions for the Mayor?
Good, thank you, Board.
Members support, seconder?
I will.
Thanks, Carol. And all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Righty ho, and then on to my report. Sorry, I've got a diary with me, so I'm going to look at the screen a little bit while I work out what I've been doing. So I sent Matariki in Christchurch and went and had a look at the fabulous stuff that was going on in the square and at the new event centre, and the light shows and things that were going on in the city, and it was really lovely to be to see so many people having returned to the central city and so many people enjoying the event that had been put on, which was very much an all ages event and was beautifully staged. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I think Matariki, I think, celebrating the way that it was intended, which is to feast with your family and friends and to think about what might happen over the remainder of the year. It felt like a really New Zealand celebration, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. the, I ran the Dunstan Zone primary school swimming champs with a very large number of students from year 4 to year 8. Unfortunately, unable to run it this year at the Cromwell pool because it was still closed due to the heating upgrade. So it was on new territory at the Alexandra pool, but a great event and very well supported by our local schools and by our local community. I want to give a nod to Marie Holden from Versatile Cromwell, who gives up an awful lot of her time every year to support that event, doing the entries and acting as recorder at the event. It's a huge amount of work that he does to ensure that it runs smoothly. I'm part of a Springboard Trust strategic leadership program this year, and I attended a really valuable day in Queenstown on the 29th of June, looking at road mapping for strategic planning plans, which I found really interesting. I attended last week the PAG giving us the update on the hall workshop, which was a good opportunity for Nigel and I, as part of that advisory group, to be able to put some questions to the team before it came to the full board. Always a great opportunity for us to be updated by a very capable team from DevMax and from our own council team as well, with Darren and Gareth, who are putting their names together there. You'll notice I'm giving them a shared name, which is an unusual thing to do, but you know. And the other thing, I went to the opening of the Waiwharoa at Cromwell Early Learning Centre on Saturday. Mayor Tim was also there. Fantastic community event, very strongly supported by the community. Lisa and her team at the Cromwell Early Learning Centre have done an amazing job over the years of creating a truly inclusive, culturally diverse and accepting environment within their centre. They've been on a journey through our kahuiako, our community of learners, where we've been looking at culturally responsive practice, and that's led them to look at some cultural narrative and to have a carver from Queenstown create a waiwharoa that means something really special to their centre. If you drive past it, stop, park outside, have a look. It is stunningly beautiful and a real testament to the work that they've done to pull it together. It's been a lot of time, it's been a lot of work to get to the point where they've got it completed, and a lot of fundraising and money to get something as beautiful as that for our community. Just want to give you a wee update on the Youth Trust. Reese, who has been the youth worker for a few years now, who's done an amazing job of really updating the Youth Trust and making it a really fantastic service for our community, not only in what happens after school for kids looking for a place to go and hang out, but also the sort of range of community services that are now provided through that organisation, and the fact that they have a great team of people working there and supporting youth in our town. He's moved on, but the trust is very, very positive about their future and the fact that they will attract somebody just as fabulous as him to go along the rest of their team of youth workers. They feel like they're in a really good position still to move forward because of the work he's done putting systems, practices, protocols in place. One of their newest things that they've provided for our schools alongside Highlands Motorsport Park and the Tony Quinn Foundation is that we have a social worker in schools who has been employed full-time for 5 years through them working mostly between the two primary schools, but also a little bit at the college. It's a service that we haven't had before in Cromwell, and Amy Kapukura, who has taken on that role, is doing an outstanding job and is a really fantastic addition to services in our community for families and young people. So that's my report. Wait for a second. Thank you. That was a Cheryl on the back. Cheryl on the back. In second. To our members' reports. Let's go this way this time. Bob.
Right, on Wednesday, the 6th of July, I too attended the Cromwell Business Group breakfast meeting, which is always, as Mayor Tim said, a good opportunity to meet people and to do some networking and so on. And I shall be attending again tomorrow. And then unfortunately, I had 3 events which I couldn't attend because I went down with COVID. One of those, of course, was the Light Up Winter, which I missed completely, which is a great shame because I'm the liaison with the promotions group who were actually putting that event on. However, on the 18th of July, I went to the monthly meeting for a debrief on the Light Up Winter, and everybody was agreed that it was a superb event, went off really well. And obviously they're now starting to plan for next year's Light Up Winter. On Tuesday, the 19th of July, I attended the unveiling of landscape plans for Lake Dunstan from Lowburn to the Dead Man's Point Bridge, which was put on by the Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust. It was very well received by approximately 80 people. There was a great deal of disappointment that there was no agreement to carry out any work to get rid of the silt build-up on the Cowra Arm, but I think that's subsequently been possibly addressed. On Wednesday, the 20th of July, I went to the AGM of the Central Otago Motorcycle Club, which was a very interesting meeting because they spent most of the evening appointing officers and committee members. First time I've been there, very good group of people, and I think they were pleased to see me. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I attended the AGM of the Speedway Club. There was a good number of people, probably 50, I think 56 or 58 people who were there. That was good. They're just working on their resource consent to try and get everything sorted for the council and going forward, because they're in line for next year for a couple of New Zealand titles. So there could be a couple of big meetings coming up if they get all their stuff in line. Also went to a meeting at the domain out at Bannockburn Domain, and they're just going through all the scenario at the moment for the questionnaire thing that was put out for all that, and just waiting to see what's going to happen there. They bought a building from somewhere down in Alex, and they've moved that there. It's like a container thing, and they've got that making their new office. So they're waiting for new carpet and all that to go in, which is going to be going in this week or early next week, and then they're making a new office in that somewhere. One of the guys that's been the greenkeeper out there for probably quite a long time, Scotty, he died a wee while ago, and then another one's not long passed away as well. So they're losing numbers. But yeah, that's still pretty positive, and yeah, just trying to go forward. Also, I just had a lot of people ringing up me about the conditions of all our roads around Bannockburn. Lots of people are ringing up about that. And yeah, a lot of people ringing up about the trees at the Sugarloaf. And that's about it.
Thank you. Neil, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm a weekly radio slot, which is now on a Friday at core date, if anybody wants to listen in, of what's on in Cromwell, which I have my gratitude towards the Cromwell Bulletin, and would normally be the notice board as well, but I think they've gone into recess for the winter, so doing that. 6th of July was a council meeting, which was good to be part of. A quick update on that. The council decided that it would not progress down providing funding for affordable housing from its resources at this stage. Was attempted to try and put that through as an item for the long-term plan to be able to consult on, looking at what the true cost would be, but the council has said no to that. There was a matter about a wilding tree policy, and that has been adopted without consultation, which again, there was a motion to try and make sure that we did actually consult on that policy, given the level of interest in it, but that didn't meet any favour either. So there is a policy that's been adopted. Fair to point out is that I think there's a very clear misunderstanding by the wider community about what a wilding tree is, and people often think that it's been planted, therefore it's not wilding. The definition of a wilding conifer is not necessarily whether it was planted or not, but whether or not it's a type of tree that can contribute to wilding trees growing as a result of their existence, and those trees on the Sugarloaf were exactly that. It'll be interesting to see just what response we get. I see that we had a note of advertising for service groups to try and get some of that firewood for the future. We did a temporary bridge at Maniatoto Road, a Bailey Bridge, which is going to cost us 280 odd K. We did some internal road stoppings, which was in the result, the policy for internal road stoppings, like we already had today, which was good to get that through. And as a result of that, the Flora Street stopping for the Greenway was approved at no value to nil value, as per the community board request. Speed limits are coming. I do want to touch base with QP. I think there's been a couple of reversals on one particular road in Lowburn Valley where we've got it back to front. I'll catch up with them about that later, but those speed limits are coming our way soon. We, in respect of takeover of private water supplies, we resolved to tell Taumata ROI that they need to inform private suppliers exactly what is proposed by the Water Services Act. So that'll be interesting to see if that happens. His Worship, I think, might have spoke about the Water Services Entity Bill. We were going with that. We'll ratify that submission on the 24th of August meeting. We'll get an update on. Oh, sorry, I'll leave that for Nigel to carry on with. Sorry, Nigel, that's your space. I'll get away from there. The Remuneration Authority determination was noted, and there's been some small changes in remuneration. The Alexandra Library renovation, the concept plan was approved subject to funding out of Free Water's savings. Remember we did a review of, they came to the board about community leasing and licensing policy. The revisions post the 12-month review were approved. The museum investment strategy has been approved. And I talked about those two already. That's about it in that space. I had a very interesting interview with a lady by the name of Alice Tilley, who's over in Oxford University, I think it is, doing a PhD, talking about the Clyde Power Project and its effects on a lot of different things. So that was interesting to go back through some of the history to that. As His Worship said, I was at the local government conference from the 20th to 22nd of July. Palmerston North's an interesting city, I can tell you. Cold and wet and miserable, and a bit like Christchurch, flat and big wide streets, and you don't know where you are. Yeah. And that's before you have a drink. I did finally get to the Light Up Cromwell, Light Up Winter for the first time ever, not being away on holiday. Got to say what a fantastic event it was on the 9th of July, and full marks to all those that made that happen, and all the support that organisation got from outside of other businesses and stuff to make it happen. It was a pretty special night, but cold, funnily enough, but it was really, really good. And like Bob, I was also at the Lake Dunstan Charitable Trust Community Vision presentation. Very good to see what the community's got to say. And unlike Bob, though, I haven't heard about the salt issue being resolved as yet. That's about it.
Thank you, Neil. Cheryl.
I attended the business meeting on the 6th, followed by council, which Neil has pretty much covered off, apart from the water stimulus program, which Nigel will cover off. Then on the 7th, we visited the Lake Dunstan water supply site in Clyde. That was really interesting. It was really good. It was really good to see where the money is gone.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. On the 13th, I went through to Alexandra and had the opportunity to meet with the Honourable Kieran McAnulty as well, it was great that he came down. It was really positive that he was prepared to listen. Shows a lot for me. And then on the 14th, there was a meeting with the historical precinct, and that included the new board, of which there's now another 4 or 5 members, which is really good. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Cheryl. Lucky that.
Thank you, Chair. Headed the business breakfast on the 6th and then council meeting. And the areas and Three Waters been touched on was an item on private water supplies and how council should be treating them, because council being approached directly, and what was pointed out by staff is that really the water regulator is the first port of call for private water supply that they want to be taken over. It's just not a straightforward process of bringing out council. They need to work with the water regulator, and any cost for the data that would be required to make a decision around that is falls with the private operator, private water supplier. And the council has certainly got no resource to put into looking at private water suppliers who want to decommission themselves. So and I think through New Zealand there's something like 75,000 private water suppliers, and I think the feeling is the government is looking at that, and they may simplify the process and raise the bar a wee bit so that people under 500 customers on their network or something, instead of trying to hit every private supplier, just raise the bar a wee bit and make life a bit practical. There was a report on the status of the water stimulus work program. So this was the $9.6 million we got for extra work to be done within Three Waters, and staff would be really commended because they worked really hard. The money had to be spent by the end of June, otherwise we lost the use of it, and it was they had to really push to do that. And as an indication, I'm just trying to, some of the projects they did end up spending the total amount of money that was available, which was a fantastic effort. And it was things along the lines, I'm just reading here: Roxburgh treatment plant, scar protection, Cromwell pump station upgrades, Naseby water treatment plant upgrades, a whole lot of really useful infrastructure that benefited from having that money to be able to accelerate and get them implemented. So that was a success story and the win for the council and the communities. And there was also discussion of the Water Entities Bill, which is going through Parliament and is at the public submission stage. And what is clear is that government had given 7 weeks for the public to respond with submissions to this bill at the select committee stage, and it's a highly complex bill. It's the bill that is enabling the Three Waters transition to take place, and it's an awful lot of technical operational detail that staff were required to respond to and make a submission, and also at a governance level for councils to make comments on the proposed governance model that's being, which is within the bill. And a lot of the government's actions over Three Waters, they're really effectively not consulting properly with their communities, but 7 weeks is just not enough time to be able to make an informed response from a council who only meets every 6 weeks for them to make a submission, and staff who are under immense work pressure anyway, for them to be able to go through a highly technical bill and make submissions is also extremely difficult. So it's just further sign of Three Waters being a rushed process. And it would be unfair to predict that it's going to be dog's breakfast. I think the dog's breakfast now, and the more they try and accelerate and get through the work program, the more corners that get cut, the more things that get not understood, the more things that get ignored. So consultation is not a strong aspect of the Three Waters process. I think apart from that, there was affordable housing has been mentioned. There's an item about districtising museums, and that's a work in progress, but there is going to be some financial modelling done of various options for museums within the district to see how it might stack up depending on which model you chose. So that's going to be an interesting piece of work when it comes back to council. I think that is all from the council meeting. The following day, as Cheryl said, we did, together with Tim, did a tour of the water treatment project in Clyde, which was fascinating and impressive. Minister McNulty, as Cheryl said, given kudos for turning up and listening to what councils say. And he was a guy from a rural background, and he understood quite a few of the issues that face us as a rural council. So whether anything happens is another question, but he was reasonably articulate and impressive and turned up. So kudos for that. And on the 29th, previous to this meeting, Anne and I had the workshop on Hall and Museum, which is what we've seen this morning. Again, it's really positive. So my report, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move for members' reports in a second, please. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Bob. All in favour? Righty-ho, that takes us to 22.5.8 on page 102 of your agenda to the governance report. Items on there to discuss. Everything fine, righty-ho, so the recommendations of the report is received. Move in a second, please.
Yep.
Thank you, that was Buck and Neil. That kind of noise that came then. That takes us date of the next meeting, which is on page 118. It is the 12th of September, which will of course be the last meeting of this current board prior to the
Drinks.
elections. So if you would like to buy us a drink, but we would also say.
We've got about a
And it's certainly drinking.
And then that takes us to the next page, which is the resolution to exclude the public. Move in a second. Yes, thank you, Nigel and Cheryl, all in favour?
Excluded anyway.